Greetings, guys. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Monette, and this is my channel, Evolve with Monette. I'm so happy to share some energy with you guys today. We're going to get into a little bit of a heavier subject matter. This is for people that are dealing with narcissists and trying to figure out what the boundaries are within a narcissistic dynamic or relationship, okay? I found myself in the position of feeling like I had no rights when I was watching someone spiral out into multiple addictions and into mental illnesses and everything else. I lived hundreds of miles away. We were not married. This was my emotional partner, but not my actual spouse. I could prove nothing other than conversations she's disclosed in drunken moments to family members and nieces and stuff in bars where she's admitted to the nature of our relationship. So I had no leg to stand on because I'm certainly not pulling up an affidavit to go contact that niece or whomever else she may have disclosed the nature of our relationship to when it was convenient for her. However, all that aside, you see, guys, I'm working on it. I found myself in the position of loving her child. I made a video a while ago when I was deeply emotional last year that I should not have made. Not that I shouldn't have made it, it's that I slipped and I said the kid's name. And the kid is Mowgli. That's what we're going to call him in this video. He is of age now. At the time, he was a minor. And that's why I also waited. And it's so amazing. My business manager was fantastic and literally caught that I said the name because I was in an emotional frenzy. I made it very close after leaving that relationship when I was highly still emotional about it. I don't recommend, but I did do that. And she caught it. She watched it as soon as it went up. God bless her soul. Didn't even know she was doing that, and called me within 20 minutes and said, "You said his name. You gotta either edit it out or take it down." And she wasn't wrong. She's always been very protective and fair regarding that situation, and even cautioned me if she felt like I was leaning into being mean. She's a sweetheart. Yeah. So I really appreciate that. So thank you. Thank you so much. However, I still had to give this food. And while I was dealing with COVID, my angels really talked to me about it. And they said, yeah, you still need to teach about this. Because the situation is that there are a lot of people out there that have children with narcissists that are biological and or they might be a step parent, but your heart's in it, right? Your heart's in the connection and the communication. Your heart is in it. And so what I wanted to do was tell you what I did. When I was aware, first things first. I don't know if I have a full checklist here for you, but let's see. Maybe I can assemble 2 to 3, maybe 3 to 4 things that I did. The first thing that I did was I built a case, just like you would in any other situation. I built a case, and the case that I built for me took over 20 years because I had been friends with her for 20 years, and she had often said to me, you know, you were raising him together. Thank you. When she was sane and not, you know, ridiculous, she would be like, you know, we're raising him together, and I appreciate this, and you know, you're like a surrogate parent, and it's hard doing this by myself. And there's a part of me, I'm going to split this up because we're dealing with a covert narc. So while I do not want to dehumanize her completely, because there were moments when she wasn't so steeped in that behavior that I could really relate, and I had the greatest admiration and respect for her parenting. I want to be really fair about that. I biologically do not have kids. I will not ever have kids. That is just the hand that I was dealt in life, okay? And I'm okay with it. I was a teacher for many years. I definitely have my fix. I am the godmother to like 3 adorable kids. And was one of those kids is having a kid right now, actually. They do grow up, don't they? So the energy that happened here in this situation is that I found myself having to remove the kid energetically because he was in the hands of someone who was irresponsible. Now, how could you remove a kid if you have no biological rights? You live millions of miles away, you're of a different race, or hundreds of miles away anyway, you're a different race. How did you even figure out how you were going to remove him? Well, the reason that I was able to do that is because my angels intervened and weighed in, and they actually asked me to. I also had her mother who had crossed over, who showed up a couple times, once sitting next to her on the couch, but then once in my bedroom that I was staying in, which happened to be her room, and she was at the other end of the house, and she stood in front of a poem that she had written years ago. She didn't say a word to me. Energetically, I didn't hear a word. What I felt was save her. She wanted me to save her. And I countered her and I said, I can't save her, but I will save him. She stood there for 20 minutes. That apparition was there for 20 minutes. Very, oh God, I was doing real spiritual warfare, and not with the mother. The mother was actually doing something that I thought was quite admirable. And I know this may seem like a really weird like direction to go and just be like, oh, so you're just talking to apparitions and whatever. I'm not a medium, but people's parents do come through because they know that I'm an open channel sometimes, and I actually will communicate. And that mother had been communicating with me, unbeknownst to me, fully back 20 years prior. I had purposely reconnected her to her biological sister that she had not wanted anything to do with, and to integrating and healing the wound of her mother, which showed its head in so many ways in the last 2 years that I was there. I even had a message from her mother that I gave her about 6 months to a year before everything went really left, where her mother says, tell her I'm passing the torch and the baton to her regarding her attractiveness, regarding the way that she interacts with any person of any sex. Tell her that I'm passing this along to her, but she has to be careful how she uses it. And unfortunately, in this situation, she greatly abused it. And I did tell her, I conveyed it. Me and her mother had weird things in common, and it was a very interesting dynamic. When you're an Earth Angel, you'll be utilized in different ways. One of the things we had in common was making our own kombucha. And yeah. We are not the same. I am a Martian, indeed. She thought that they looked like aliens in the closet when her mother did it, and I sent her a picture once, and she was like, "Oh my God, my mom used to do that." Me and her mom, for whatever reason, were connected. She didn't come through all the time. I probably talked to her maybe 4 or 5 times in the time frame, when meaning having her come through. But in this moment, she was there because she wanted me to save her. She said that there was something that I needed to do, and I couldn't do anything else for her. She was a lost cause, but he was not. And that's what we're going to talk about. When I say I built a case, I had observed her and observed other people's opinion of her parenting for years. But I loved her, and I will be honest, as an empath, I enabled her. I did not want to ever see her as anything other than virtuous and kind. And I knew she had her personal struggles. I knew she had her personal issues with addiction, but it was hard because I loved her. Flaws were hard to find. You know how that goes when you love somebody, you just don't look at them any other way. But I was in a cult in Alabama, and that's how I actually met her, at a similar place that we had worked. And one of the people in the cult, well, a group of them, had wanted to take Mowgli when he was a kid, when he was like a toddler. And I was like appalled and like, I can't understand it. And I actually, out of the people in the cult, I know that's weird to say, this was one person in the cult that I actually thought was a great mother, and has turned out to end up having like 3 or 4 kids, and they're all fantastic. However, at the time, I don't even know if did she have one? She may have had 1 or 2 at the time. 1. Yeah, she had 1. All right, guys. So here's the deal with this. She she was very obsessed with Mowgli. He's quite charismatic and magical, and she wanted to take him. And I thought, this is really strange. And I never told my friend for many years later. I didn't tell her until almost 18 years later that was a thing that was discussed, and they were trying to intervene. And then she kind of paired it back up and remembered that there was an obsession, and she went out of her way, and she focused a lot on him in the preschool classes and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah, girl, I've never lied. I have no reason to lie to you. So that was the thing that happened. Years later, I had a station manager, and I had my friend on the show, and it was called something, I don't know. It was a show about like, you are not your palate, or something like that. Your kids are not your palate, right? And she was talking about her experiences with reading and diving into Dr. Shafali and her teachings about how to parent your kid in a better and healthier way. And all parents are just doing the best they can. And I was impressed with her. I was impressed because I love Dr. Shafali. Dr. Shafali, PS, by the way, also does a lot of talks about divine feminine and masculine. Maybe if I can find it, I will connect it below. So there's just a lot to know regarding Dr. Shafali. She's a wealth of knowledge. But the thing about it is that this station manager, after the show, pulled me aside and for an hour was like, your friend is in trouble. And I listened back to the show, and I genuinely didn't understand why he had taken such offense. I knew he was conservative and whatever, and I thought, is it just rubbing him the wrong way that she's a single mom and whatever? And I was very defensive of her, as any good friend would be and whatnot. And I had never seen any of those issues that she had, I had seen that she was struggling regarding making healthy choices when she was in a relationship. If I had any complaint or any observation, that was the thing that I was like, this is a problem. And I would tell her, you don't do two things well. And I was pointing out to her because I was put in her life as an earth angel, as an empath, as a friend, to kind of guide her around this moment and to support her. The reason that I was in her life and was so vowing to be in her life, she always thought it was about her. It was truly after I saw her get divorced and go through a relationship that I advised her with a woman not to get into. I told her it was going to be toxic and leave her really broken. She disregarded me, and that's okay. We all have free will, yeah? We all have free will, but she disregarded me and she jumped headfirst into that relationship. Now, maybe she got some of her needs filled, but what I did notice as her friend, at the time I wouldn't even have called myself her best friend at the time, but as her friend, I did notice how the woman, we'll call her Crystal, the woman was not a good surrogate parent to Mowgli, my Mowgli. Very territorial, energetically over him. This is not a kid I will ever see again, because I had to make a sacrifice. When you're dealing with a narc, you cut ties and you walk away. And because we had no biological rights, I knew that she would use him to play games. And so I just said, angels, you guys are going to have to take care of it. But her, Crystal, her wife, was terrible to Mowgli and saw him as a nuisance and really just wanted my friend, which is fine. Well, it's not fine. Excuse my past codependent ways there, people-pleasing ways. It wasn't fine at all. Pissed me off. And I made a lot of efforts to go up and spend time with him and to pop tents with him. You know, like I would travel with whoever my spouse was at the time, and I would build tents with him and do little things and have little cooking classes and bring him chef hats and all that stuff. That's kind of my jam. It's what I like to do. And we connected, and he always had a little sweet respect for me that grew into a bigger respect as we went on. But what I quietly never told her was that I'm in your life because I think you make piss poor decisions when you're in a relationship and you do wild Taliban stuff that I'm not going to splay all out here, but she didn't put first her child. That's the only complaint I could have. She bought the go-karts and the chip packs, and she made sure he was in every sport and he was a star athlete. There were so many things that she did beautifully. It would be disingenuous of me, no matter what our personal history is, to say otherwise. But I'm not wrong about the way that it was handled whenever she was in a relationship. So that's fine. I walked her through that relationship. I got her out of it. Sea salt divorces. I helped her exit that relationship energetically. I held her hand. I knew it was going to be a disaster. I talked to her when she wouldn't talk to me or couldn't talk to me because she was in a toxic relationship that sometimes had isolation. I will say this about her spouse. Her spouse was just a con artist and a grifter. She wasn't a narcissist or anything like that. She was definitely a user and opportunist for sure. I used to always wonder how they ended up together because I thought my friend was so virtuous. Nay. Birds of a feather and like attracts like. I totally understand now how they ended up together. But her friend wasn't disrespectful to me. In fact, her friend used to say to me, ironically, "You're like an earth angel. I've never met anybody like you." And she didn't try me. She didn't really run up. She was actually kind to me enough. Maybe she, I don't know how she felt. Lesbians are territorial. But towards the end of it, she found herself confiding in me about how hard it was to love that friend. Yeah. But I also thought, you're hard to love and you made things tough. And I despised her, to be honest with you, for the way that she treated Mowgli as an afterthought and made him feel ostracized in his house. And I was disgusted with my friend on some level, but not that much, because at the time, my vitriol, I was like, she's young, we're figuring things out. But I didn't like that she was more concerned about her well-being personally and her libido initially, and then all that fizzled out when the relationship completely died, and then they were just toxic roommates that hated each other, and this woman hates your child and she's there. And I hated it. I hated it so much because he didn't deserve that. He's such an awesome kid. And I was like, I vow to be in his life until she can manifest a partner that's right? Meaning be in their life. And I loved her too. So let me not be so heroic about this. I had my own agenda, which was that I had a friendship with her and I really adored her. So I was there and I was like, I'm going to be the surrogate parent, the auntie, the monetti, whatever he needs me to be. And I'm going to hold her and I'm going to be in the trenches with her and parent with her so that she doesn't feel so alone and alienated. When she got into another relationship, finally, years later, that's when things went super, super left. She had dated and done things in between quietly so that her son was unaware. In that way, I have to say she did not interfere or bring chaos to her son that way, but she had very loose boundaries and loose morals regarding the day-to-day as he got older and it got tougher. And I think that for any parent of a teen, I imagine, chime down below, that it's not an easy way to go. I remember being a teen and what kind of like hormonal crazy person I was, and I totally understand that there may have been times that she was frustrated, but she was dealing with her own mental illness. And what I saw with Mowgli is that he was her life coach. He was her pep talker. He was a self-motivated kid. He was a self-starter. He was an overachiever. He had a weighted GPA, 4 point something. He was being kind of scouted and looked at. And he was also having a lot of just good luck, Dean's List, straight A student, just the whole thing. There was a lot of energy with him where he was very much sought after and very popular. He pledged in the little high school fraternity thing that they had. I don't know what it was called. Rowdy Boys, Rude Boys, something. But the point is this. When I say build a case, I'm meandering, guys, but I'm trying to keep my emotions completely calm in this. When my station manager said all that to me, I was like, how dare you, opine? And I even told her about it because I was like, he's fine. You know, Mowgli's fine. Everything's good. Then I had an incident where my husband, you know, got to interact with them as a family dynamic. And within 5 minutes, my husband was like, no, that there's something, no, this is not good. And this is going to lead him down. He predicted exactly what happened. Literally the trajectory that he ended up going down for a little while until there was a lot of spiritual intervention and his own angels started to speak to him. My husband predicted it. And my husband is nobody's, you know, he's very intuitive, but he's not exactly a psychic, but he predicted it. And he wasn't wrong. I mean, down to a T. And what I did, because I was in my own toxic dynamic with her, where she had some control, and I definitely allowed her to have that, and I was codependent, etc., etc. She was my bestie, yada, yada. I like shut him up the way you do with your husband, where you're like, don't you say a word, because I knew what a trigger that was to her. She used to call him her prince in the beginning. And when I would say something to her about parenting, I helped her with some parenting dynamics as we were initially together many years ago. And I remember her being very, you know, triggered by that. As I think any young single mother would be, you do not want someone opining. So I always like protected her feelings and emotions about it. Then I was dropped off by a friend last year, and 5 minutes, same thing. Around the Escalade, she pulled me and she was like, da 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 da. And she included some stuff about the kid, and not bad. She was like, probably an amazing kid. This is a crazy and unfortunate situation. And it was heartbreaking because I had tried to hide and protect her. And other family members of hers had tried to do interventions with her. And what she would do is what anybody that's in an addicted state or a covert or overt narcissistic state would just be in denial and then cut everybody else out. And I'm embarrassed to say that I assisted her with that. I assisted her with the cutting out of people, meaning energetically coaching her on how to set boundaries, because I thought they were the danger. When her own child would say that this is hard for me, mom, or this embarrassed me, mom, or whatever, I would be like, oh, he's overreacting. You see? So I built a case. It wasn't just my own opinion. Here's what I did. I introduced to him the concept of his angels via our conversations. He would streak through the house and he'd say, Monetti, and I loved him for that. And he would always know when his mother and I were on the phone, and we were always talking about spirituality and different things like that. And so I introduced to him the concept of his angels and cards and pulling cards and starting to get to know his intuition. He was very, very whip smart, as I said, with the GPA and the Dean's List, and he was just thinking light years ahead of his classmates regarding the Illuminati and conspiracy theories. He was just a good kid, a really brilliant kid, and who was rising like a lotus above really muddy, dark circumstances. And he struggled with that upbringing and things like that. And so all I wanted to do was support him. And when he would gaslight or play his mom, this is hilarious, I would call him on it if I was there and he was playing games. I was more, it's funny, I always called this person a masculine energy or distorted masculine or divine masculine in my life at a point. She was super ultra feminine. That's not it. Her behavior was masculine. The way that she acted, dated, and went about things was masculine, but it wasn't masculine in the bedroom. It wasn't masculine in her day-to-day life whatsoever. In fact, as we were in our interactions, I would have been the more strict and or paternal masculine energy in the parental style. That's another video for another day. I was very much like, cut the shit. That was my way, okay? And I could always see when he was running game and whatever. I once instructed her to have him write an essay on gaslighting, which to me was just like a 360 hilarious moment later when she stood in my face and gaslit me about so many things. I was like, really, B? But any case, the way that I felt about him was super protective, but I was like, I'm going to hold on. Our relationship was toxic. I knew it was crumbling. She was unhappy. I was unhappy, but we had a family dynamic and I was trying to keep it together. And I was unhappy because a lot of things weren't being met for me and whatever. But after Crystal, I decided I would never abandon her before he was 18. So he was almost there, right? He was like 16, 17, and at 16, things started to spiral. Now, what also happened there is she got into a new relationship. And I knew it because she's not good at two things. I knew her like the back of my hand. She was my emotional partner. And I was like, and she was hiding it from me because the girl was racist and she couldn't disclose. But even Mowgli tipped me off because the kids always know. And he didn't like the energy. Also, what she didn't factor in is like, hashtag, didn't I teach you astrology, girl? He was a Taurus. Her wife, her new partner, third party dynamic, polyamorous relationship, whatever that was, she was a Scorpio. They are opposing signs on the astrological realm, which means it doesn't matter how much he smiled in her face or rode on the pontoon or did whatever else God knows, and God knows I better never know. God is so good that he protected me from knowing about the interactions there. But especially if it was of any detriment to him. But what I will say is that they diametrically hate each other, Scorpios and Tauruses. Usually they're repellent to one another. Sometimes it can work in very rare cases, but as a rule, it is the opposite sign of the zodiac, and it's an incompatible pairing as they're both fixed and unmovable. Yeah. So what I will say is that whether he smiled in his mama's face or not, he didn't like it, and he made sure to tell his mother, and that is what got me into overdrive the last week I was there. But I had started doing intercessory prayer 3 years before. This is the point, guys. You do have rights to remove this person or this child if they are in danger. What happened when I was there? Well, let me backtrack. Christopher Maloney, I'll get to that. What happened, though, is that I introduced him to his angel so that he could hear the voice of God. Here's how it came in handy. A couple times before it was all over and I knew I could never go back, I was there watching him, and he was seeking guidance from his mother about the military, which branch he should go into. And she was in her love stupor, addicted stupor, sex stupor, alcoholism, and she was not giving good advice. And I watched her slumped into the couch as he was slumped. And this is important because he had a very erect posture. He was like very bro guy, like broski, like very I always call him country fresh. He was just a great looking kid and really confident, super confident. And I watched him with his shoulders hunched over as he was asking his mother for guidance about which branch. And I was watching the body language. I was sitting in the middle of them, and he was sitting at the fridge and she was sitting on the couch, and I was going back and forth like a tennis match. Now, here's why the shoulders are important. One of the tells that she gave me as I was validating how much are you lying to me that you're in a toxic relationship is whenever she was in a toxic relationship with Crystal, I learned that her shoulders were she had bad posture. And I don't know if it was that way all the time. I noticed it was especially profound during the relationship. And as she was texting back and forth with her polyamorous partner, and there's nothing wrong with polyamory. For anybody that's into polyamory, message, side note, there's a great book called The Ethical Slut. It is not my jam per se, but she was not doing anything in an ethical way, let's just say. Anyway, check that out for those of you. I'm always about research. I work with clients that are dealing with all kinds of situations. I stand in nobody's judgment. What she was doing was fine if she would have handled it right, and also she would have been honest considering the dynamics of our relationship. That, it's so silly what a mess she made, because it was, y'all, I'm so liberal. She is crazy. But anyway, back to this kid and saving the baby to me, even though he's a teenager. I'm always going to remember him as a little Mowgli baby from the Jungle Book. That's why I call him Mowgli. That's what he looked like when he was a kid. And he was that ferocious and that fearless, and I loved him. And I love him still. But what happened, I lost my train of thought. Oh, okay. What happened is that his shoulders were hunched over as he was asking for advice. And I was like, really? I was like, is whatever you are whipped on, whatever kind of pee poom poom whipping is happening in your life, is it that important that your kid is asking you for guidance and you can't even pull yourself out of your stupor and your obsession with this person to parent him? She may have thought this is like, oh, you're obsessed with me, you're jealous. No. I was there for a purpose. I did not get distracted, and I do balance things well. So I was very much looking at her like, are you kidding, girl? This is where you're going to drop the ball. You've done this all by yourself, and it's been hard, and I've encouraged you, and I've let a lot of your toxic behavior and crazy choices like go, and I've coddled you about this, but this is where you drop the ball. So, and the thing that made me irate is that he was seeking something, and she was so busy parenting and being in love with this person that she was sleeping with that was younger, so she decided to adopt another child while her child was fledgling and needed her. And it really broke my heart, not because of what she thought, because I'm like, how are you going to go raise this person's 3 kids? She has a husband, sweetie. You're by yourself, and he needs to be your priority. Because I understood the dynamic that was going to happen is that he would go away and not be home ever again in that capacity. Yes, he'll be back, and yes, he'll see her and whatever, but there was a lot that was shifting, and I think she was completely oblivious because something else mattered more. So as he was asking for guidance, I prayed and I said, angels, show him the way. Lead him exactly to where he needs to be, because I needed it to be his decision. I needed him to embrace his newfound masculinity in that he was coming into himself, coming of age as a man. I wanted him to make a decision for himself that he could feel proud of and he could stand in. And he did. He ended up choosing the branch that was right for him, that was going to give him a backbone and foster relationships and parenting and provide him with a surrogate family. The reason that I started praying 3 years prior is because my angels showed me how it would all go and how it would be, and that she would unravel and that she would self-destruct. What I didn't bank on was how much it would affect him and mess him up. And the thing that caused me to really intervene was that there were multiple car accidents that happened within about a 6 to 8 month time span, about 4. One of them where he was almost decapitated, and he was struggling with the demons, the hungry demons that were chasing him down, because that was a family pathology he was working out between his mother and his father. And he was seeking out fathering, and he was seeking out guidance, and exactly where he ended up is where he needed to be to have the guidance, and so that he can find his place to stability and maybe even someday very happy. But I prayed and I intervened and I intercessory prayer. I didn't do any rituals or anything like that. That's not my jam. I'm God all day, every day, right? Jesus is my homie. But my angel said, you have to do this without yielding. And they asked me at the beginning when I made the prediction to her about what a shit show she was about to create with this person. Once again, and I had no patience the second time around. The first time I excused it because of her age. She was young, we're figuring stuff out, I'm completely reasonable and fair. The second time I said, no homie, you're 40 now, get your shit together. Well, 39, she wouldn't want me to say 40, but she's always a year younger than me. But I was like, you need to get your shit together because you have a kid. She's not your kid, her kids are not your kid, this is your kid. This is our kid? What are you doing? And I didn't care about her being in love. I encouraged her to date. I taught her how to date. I taught her how to communicate. I taught her how to do anything she needed to do regarding dating. I'm going to leave it there. Literally, I would coach her through everything. So this was not about like, you just don't want me to live my best life. No, she was so immature to even have gone that way. This was about this kid and how he was going to survive another day. Now, there was a moment in his life where he had a karmic soulmate that came in, and she was already off the reservation and doing anything and thinking that she needed to be like Mary Stuart Masterson off of Weeds, like she wanted to have an empire with her son. And I kept talking to her about it in subtle ways. I don't, because of our dynamic, I thank God for my Gemini mother, I know how to do a riddle, but I let her know, like, I know what you did last summer, homie. I know what you're doing. I know what's happening here. And he's a kid and he thinks it's cool, but he's a Taurus. He's traditional. He's going to look back at this later and he is going to have some resentment for you. Okay. And I was trying to offset that and trying to avoid that. And he had a karmic soulmate. And she told me one day, she said, I saw a demon run by his now this is if this is new information for you, we talk about spirituality all the time. She saw an imp. She saw a small demon run by his room, an energy or an entity. Now, when I was in her house, I saw all kinds of entities. So I know for a fact that she wasn't lying. I had birds flying against the window repeatedly, something she had as well. But she was so much devolved into her addicted hell that she was not using her intuition and spirituality and paying attention, that she was under a spiritual attack. She even had like an infestation at one point of ants or flies or something, and I was like, "Bitch, you are living in the omen. This girl is toxic. It is literally actually shifting a spiritual dynamic and opening up a portal." Anyway, this kid ends up having this best friend. They're joined at the hip, and she says to me, "He's just like me and you, joined at the hip. He loves him. That's his person, just like you're my person." And I was like, "Homie, I'm your person, but there's something not good there." So I didn't wait for her to give me the okay. I just started prayer. And I said, "God, if this is not a good person in his life, remove him and take him away." Within a week, that kid went to jail. Not because I prayed for him to go to jail, but because God is faithful to the people that serve him. And he absolutely pulled him out. And he said, "This friend doesn't deserve him, my Mowgli." And what happened was, it kept them apart because he kept getting into trouble, that friend, which was what I felt in my heart. And I was like, why are you not discerning this? Why are you not intervening? Why are you even facilitating it? You can't stop your kid from having a friend, right? Like, they're going to do what they're going to do. That was his person. You know, we can't tell our kids anything. But I don't talk to kids that way. Kids are kids, and I'm an adult. And that was always my dynamic with Mowgli, which was like, I'm going to do my part, and I'm not going to argue with you about anything, and you're not going to argue with your mother either. I was very much a disciplinarian energetically and a support system for her, as she was my priority. She was my friend. And so I just didn't ever tell her about that. I just removed him. When she started telling me about that kid, "Oh, he went to jail. Oh, they can't be around each other. Oh, they both went into different branches of the military. They couldn't even meet to hug, but I did go up to meet his mom." I was like listening to her like, but I knew all along, because I did what any parent does. I had the most maternal mama bear energy I've ever had in my life. I don't think I'll ever come close to it again, because I felt so much disrespect and oblivious energy from her. I was like, this is not okay. And the fact that you're more infatuated and in lust and in addiction than you are into parenting, your kid needs you. His school suffered. He ended up being not even graduating, which is crazy for the GPA and how intelligent he was. And she was super cool with it. Super, super, super cool. Because she had not worked out her family pathology and stuff. So she was like, "Oh, this is fine. He can go to alternative school. He can do this." And I was like, "Bleh, what are you talking about?" Now, maybe that was just me being super extra and protective, but I was very like not okay with it. So what happened was, we wrapped into the year and I was back there one more time. I had a lot of paranormal experiences. I gave a lot of bile. I threw up a lot while I was there. I transmuted a lot of energy. And what I did was I prayed ultimate removal prayers until she could get her stuff together and then he could be back there. Even in the last couple of years, I think the last year he was home, I sent a bunch of like holiday meals that were already done, frozen meals, so that all she had to do was pop it in the oven so she could spend time with him. She kept talking about like, "Oh, I'm just ready, I'm exhausted." And as a single mother, I cannot begrudge her being exhausted. But as a covert narcissistic parent, I was thinking, girl, you're going to miss this. You're going to not realize that you forfeited the last 2 years of your son ever being at your house like that ever again. He will never live with her again, whether she understood that or not. And it doesn't mean he won't see his mom. He absolutely will. I would never drive a wedge between them. In fact, they need each other. He's a Taurus ruled by the moon, which is Luna, which is mother. He's very mother identified. But what I realized is that I needed him to be in a place where he could grow and run and thrive. And I feel like all he would have done is ended up on the couch and they would have some like drug trade together and he'd be working at a Jiffy Lube as a legitimate job and questioning why he was a loser. And he's not a loser. He was dealing with familial pathology and hungry demons that wanted to take him off of the greatness of his path. His mother had already allowed herself to be derailed. His father never even got on track. So I knew that it was me that was going to have to stand in the space there and have his back, and have his back I did. I didn't care about how it made her feel. I don't care if she sees this video. I don't care how she feels about it. I'm proud of the work I did. It is the best work I've ever done. She was a hopeless case. He was not. And he has now found hope from a hopeless place. He may not even realize it, but what they showed me while I was there was her mother coming through saying, save her. And I said, no, I'll save him instead. And then she kind of disappeared. But she stood there for 20 minutes in that very, very cold room. She always wondered why I had the heater on and why it was so hot. She didn't know about the spiritual work that I was doing. He made fun of me. God bless his Mowgli soul. Said, Mama, is Monetti afraid of the dark? The lights are on all night. I was doing all night prayer vigils to intercede on his behalf out of my Pentecostal roots so that I could make sure that the devil didn't have the last laugh. Not with him anyway. She'd already sold her soul. She'd already given away her power and her agency. And that was not a place that I wanted him to ever be. So I prayed and I prayed and I removed him. And you can do the same. Just because you don't have actual rights doesn't mean that your efforts are in vain. 3 years, never said a word to her. As soon as I predicted that she was going to sleep with this person and create a whole mess of her life, God said, you have to be ready to do the ultimate sacrifice. It reminds me of the King Solomon story. You are not his rightful mother. She is. She is the biological mother. But are you willing to walk away? Even though you love him, even though I could drop 17 tears right now about him. But they said, are you willing to walk away forever if you can save him energetically so that he has a chance to have a family that will hold him just in case anything happens to his mother. She was in such a bad state that I was pretty sure she was going to end up either killing herself or overdosing or getting into a physical altercation because of domestic violence and sleeping with people's spouses. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen to her. And my angels wouldn't let me see anymore because of the pain. They had closed down our portal, energetic telepathy and whatever. They were protecting me because they knew that if I saw her that I could end up in jail. Amen. Because I was feeling away. And also that I could end up in pain or a spiritual mental jail. They're like, you have to heal from this. And the line that they put a lot of things in my head regarding how to deal with this, but I did. And the thing that they showed me, and that's what I want to end with, is Christopher Maloney, which is from Law & Order SVU. Christopher Maloney, there's an episode, I will connect the video below. I was at her house and I was watching something and it just popped up on my feed. I was watching probably tarot readings or something else and it popped up on my feed and my angels are like, click on this is for you. And it's him on a beach in Cape Cod, or not Cape Cod, but Long Island or something, and he's talking to his mother. His daughter has just been recently diagnosed as bipolar with mental illness, and he's trying to make the link in his family, the family pathology connection. He goes on, he begs his mother to tell him, like, Mom, do you remember my childhood? Like, this was like this, and she said it was like this. So she was remembering all these glamorized bipolar, magical thoughts, and he was remembering being left or feeling abandoned or feeling embarrassed or feeling sad or feeling issues when he was just sitting there, with his dad or whatever. And they said, this is Mowgli. Mowgli will one day look back at his mom and he will realize the depth of her mental illness and who she was. And he'll still love her, just like Christopher Maloney did. But he was in uniform too. Or, well, he was in his detective uniform, right? The button down and the khakis and whatnot. And they said, Mowgli will be in uniform and he will come back and he will see his mom and she'll be so proud of him and he will be so happy to see his mom because he loves her. But as he gets older and when he raises his own kids and when that Taurus energy kicks in after he's about 28 after his first Saturn return and he has a wife and he has all of these things, he will realize, oh yeah, this wasn't normal. And that's why I did probably the hardest praying I've ever done in my life. To get him to a place where he could have family, even if it's surrogate in the military, where he could get the fathering that he was desperate for, and he could be away from her as she self-destructed. It was hard because I know how much she loves him when she's in a good place, and I know how much he loves her, but I needed him to be safe. Way more than I cared about our relationship or how she felt. God said, are you willing to walk away from her completely? Absolutely. Are you willing to walk away from him completely? That was harder, but I did it because when you parent, even though she never gave me credit, and even though she wouldn't understand, I didn't parent, I wasn't there every day, so I want to be so clear about that. She did the hard, heavy lifting. But what I will say is that it was the most mama bear I ever felt. I didn't give it one single damn about her. In fact, I was livid with her about him. It wasn't about her new backwoods Barbie. That I could have cared. Girl, I would have walked her through how to be with backwards Barbie in a way that could have been sustainable instead of the fuckery that she did. But when it came to Mowgli, when it came to that kid, that was it. I did what I had to do, and you can do the same. You are Christ Protection Services. Nothing I did was in vain. It's the best I've ever done. I'm so proud of it. And it means that he has a fighting chance, and he chose it. That's why I needed him to make the choice about his branch and about where he was going to go. He was college bound, and he probably still could have been there. But because she had just let everything go so desperately, that was what he thought he had as choices, and that's okay. He's exactly where he's supposed to be. That's what God said to me. And his grandmother is watching over him, and she's watching over her. And I prayed that when she got herself back together, he would come back and they could like talk and they could heal and it would be fine. But I didn't want him there watching that and being part of that and then thinking that he was a loser. No, he had entities and demonic attachments. That house was filled with a bunch of shenanigans, and I did the best I could to sweep it away, clear it away, holy oil it away while I was drugged and drunk. God, amen. I mean, she was a lot. And he's a lot, but in the best way. I pray that she finds herself again, but I really don't care. I felt like she was a lost cause. I'm going to leave it right there. I told her mother to her face, to the apparition energy anyway. I'm not doing anything else for her. I about killed myself trying to save her, and she didn't want to be saved. But he lives another day. Amen, guys. You can do it. Don't hesitate. Pray your way through it. God's got you. Your angels will guide you. Best work I ever did. I love you. Come back. Join me next time. We'll continue to evolve, even when it's really hard, together.